Have you ever felt like the world was falling apart, but there's nothing you could do to stop it? Well, don't let these guys hear you say that, or else the next thing you know, you'll end up with an electric collar around your neck and a therapy bill that only can be paid in blood. Yeah, these 7 criminals are locked in a prison cell where the only way out is to confront their deepest traumas. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the death game in Catalyst. These prisoners are about to have the most traumatic experience of their lives. In the near future, a secret organization known as the Collective began recruiting new members for an unknown cause. And today, this guy Alec here just made the list. The man's sitting at a bar when a stranger sits down to join him, and the next thing that we see, he's holding a pistol behind his back as he walks into a church. Going up to the priest, he confronts the man for abusing him when he was younger, before firing a shot as he runs out of the building. But when he turns down a nearby alley, he's suddenly knocked out by 2 men in military-style gear and dragged into the back of an unmarked van. The next thing he knows, he wakes up somewhere in the middle of the desert, missing everything down to his clothes. There's nothing around besides an old white car with the word surrender written on the windshield. And inside, he finds a jumpsuit with his last name on the patch, but that's when he notices a phone ringing on the ground nearby. Picking it up, the voice on the other end announces that his final test is about to begin. Hearing them unlock the car, he finds a note inside reading, "He will haunt you," when suddenly he realizes that he's surrounded by more of the masked guards. Panicking, he tries starting the engine only to realize that it doesn't really work, but as he makes a run for it instead, one of them launches a taser into the back of his neck, knocking him out again as they load him into the back of the van. Alright, somebody really needs to teach this guy how to follow instructions. Most people don't end up in a death game unless they've done something to deserve it, and it looks like that's exactly what happened here. I mean, think about it, right? If society's falling apart because there's too much crime and there's a secret organization out there taking people off the street as retribution, then the absolute last thing you want to do is cap somebody in broad daylight. But with that being said, you can't blame the guy for wanting revenge, so it's not exactly hard to see how he ended up in this situation. Now, although 9 times out of 10 running for your life is the best strat, sometimes you need to think more carefully before jumping to conclusions. And in this case, it was actually his biggest mistake. If their goal was to kill him, then they could have easily done that already, so it should have been obvious that this was a test from the very beginning. He should have done the exact opposite of whatever his instincts told him. We know this is true because after waking up naked, they eventually unlocked the trunk to give him some clothes, showing that they'd actually help him as long as he does whatever they're looking for. This is why his reaction, once the guards showed up, was totally wrong. But if he was paying attention, then he would have realized they're not as threatening as they seemed. The guards weren't carrying any weapons, and the fact that they were hiding their faces was actually a good thing, because if they were always planning to kill him, then there would be no reason to hide their identity. Before they attacked, they were even trying to communicate with him by pointing up or down whenever he made a good or bad decision. And that's why the smartest thing that he could have done was surrender just like they told him to all along. The next time that he wakes up, he's being taken to a hidden bunker where they put the evidence of his crimes up on a big projector, and a mysterious woman approaches, asking what he'd be willing to give up in exchange for his freedom. This time, they knock him out with some kind of sleeping gas, and he wakes up in a cage somewhere else in the facility, lined up against the wall along with 6 other prisoners. As he goes down the line taking off their masks, the guard explains that the next test will be starting soon, but first, they need to know the rules. Rule number 1, nobody leaves the cage until the test is over. Rule number 2, no messing with the shock collar that's been placed around their necks. And last but not least, no killing the other players until they're ready. But that's when things get interesting. According to the guard, there's a parasite among them, and they only have 1 hour to make their choice or die. The men all gather around at the center of the stage, trying to figure out what the organizers want them to do. Frustrated, Alec shouts at the guard looking for more information, but his only response is to keep repeating the same 2 things, saying that there's a parasite in the group and asking, "Why do you deserve to live?" None of them can understand what he means by this, and as tensions in the room start to rise, the prisoners quickly begin fighting amongst themselves. One of the men, named Lozano, starts laughing to himself in the corner, as if he knows something that the others don't. But while they're all focused on him, this guy Muhammad decides to make a break for the exit, only to be knocked flat on his back as he crashes straight into an electrified force field. Suddenly, the guard pulls out a strange device, activating their shock collars until they all pass out on the floor. Now, while he's unconscious, Alec begins to have flashbacks of what happened before he was brought there, remembering how the man at the bar passed him a business card with a strange symbol that matched what he saw in the organization's bunker. Okay, this must be what happens when John Kramer plays too much Among Us. Now, these guys in the airsoft masks could obviously never come close to the GOAT himself, but just like with a jigsaw trap, the rules here might actually tell them more than just what they say on the surface. Like, think about it this way, right? If their goal was really to kill the parasite, then they easily could have done that already. And as a matter of fact, everything about this is designed not to hurt them, which means that the organizers want them to stay alive. If they look around the room, they'll notice that there aren't any cameras, meaning that they're not doing this for anyone's entertainment. They also have their last names already printed on their shirts, and unlike the guards, they've already had their masks removed so that they can actually see each other's faces. Organizers want them to get to know each other, so instead of fighting amongst themselves, they need to start working together to come up with some ideas. Now, earlier, Alec remembered the man at the bar passing him a business card with the same symbol that the collective uses, meaning they were already watching him before he was recruited. If the same is true for everybody else, then we know they were all picked for a specific reason, and the key to getting out of here could be figuring out why they were chosen. If I were in Alec's position, I'd point this out to the others as soon as they wake up, and then go around the room asking everyone what they remember from before they were abducted, looking for any patterns that seem to match up. In tense situations like this, frightened people have a tendency to fall victim to groupthink, and what you don't want is to end up being singled out. But speaking up early isn't about looking for the answer, it's also a way to subtly manipulate them into thinking that Alec is somebody that they can trust, thanks to the first speaker effect. Basically, the person who speaks first usually sets the tone, becoming the default authority figure because the others instinctively view them as the leader. This gives him social capital amongst the group, making it a lot less likely they'll turn on him when things get sketchy. Kind of like using the other prisoners as meat shields without them even knowing it. Their punishment must be related to their crimes, so learning what each of them did will get them one step closer to figuring out who the parasite really is. But we'll have to learn more about the other prisoners first before we can make any final decisions. They wake up again a few minutes later, and some of them are furious at Muhammad for getting them all punished. That's when Lozano steps to the center of the room, suggesting that they should get to know each other first. The oldest man in the group starts by introducing himself as Father Patrick Breyer, and as soon as he hears that the man is a priest, Alec turns to the guards again, looking even more worried, but they stay completely silent until he goes back to the group. Alec introduces himself next, saying that he works an ordinary desk job without much else going on in his life. Then comes Cartwright, a professor of human studies, but the process is taking way too long. And noticing that they've already wasted about 10 minutes, they start trying to find similarities in the way that they were all brought there. They can all remember waking up in the desert with a different word written on the windshield of each car. Lozano recalls that his said victim, Alex was surrender, and the others all had words like fear, atone, guilty, and selfish. The words must mean something, and Alec here thinks that it must have been related to their test. Thinking back, Muhammad remembers how the organizers somehow had security footage from a time that he was jumped by a bunch of racists at his body shop, as if they've been watching him for a while and knew exactly what to show him to make him angry. They're not getting any closer to figuring it out, and Lozano starts suggesting that they should just try fighting their way out instead. But the others already know that's never going to work. Just then, a projection appears on the wall showing footage of the organizers going after each of their families, and the men realize that their only choice is to keep playing along. The voice announces that there are only 50 minutes remaining, and that's when the speakers begin playing audio from a news report revealing that Father Breyer here was investigated for targeting young members of his church. He doesn't show any remorse for what he's done, and this causes Alec to go into a rage as he starts shouting at the guards for putting them together. But the only instruction they're given is to kill the parasite. This brings him to the conversation at the bar, where the strange man told him that taking the card was his chance to finally face his demons, but he still can't figure out how this all fits together. Alright, the groups keep getting closer to the answer, but they're still missing the point. Now that they know more about each other's backstory, we can start to see why the organization stuck them all in a cage like this together. It should be completely obvious that putting Alec in here with the priest was no coincidence, and it's for the same reason they were forcing Muhammad to watch the footage from his body shop. They are deliberately trying to trigger them by reminding them of the most traumatic experiences of their lives. When you're reminded of an insanely traumatic experience, your brain actually perceives it as a real physical threat, causing your fight or flight response to kick in and bringing back the same feelings as the original event. Sometimes, exposing someone to a trauma trigger is done as a form of therapy called exposure therapy, where the goal is to help the person process and eventually overcome the trauma. The test here seems like it could be some kind of twisted version of that, and it makes sense when you think about everything that's happened so far. A minute ago, they remembered another phrase that the guards told them: fate guides the willing but drags the unwilling. Remember, everything they're told has a specific purpose behind it. In this case, fate is everything that's happened to them since they were caught by the collective, and now they can either let the organizers guide them or keep getting dragged along until time finally runs out. The good news is that they already know exactly what the collective wants them to do. If we think back to the first test, the words on the cars weren't just meant to remind them of the traumatic experience, they were actually instructions guiding them on how to respond. Like, for example, Alex was surrender, which is the opposite of getting violent, so whatever happens, he needs to resist the urge to go after the priest instead of giving in to his desire for revenge. Father Breyer's word was atone, so it's pretty obvious that he needs to repent for his sins, but they've already picked up on the fact that he's not really sorry for what he's done. Right now, I'd go around the group figuring out how each person's word relates to their traumatic event. That will tell them exactly how to respond when they're triggered, stopping them from fighting each other and getting them closer to figuring out the true answer. Anyone who refuses to play along might be the parasite, so if they have to pick someone in the end, that should make it easier to narrow down a suspect. New channel alert! New channel alert! What up, Meat Shields? It's your boy dropping in real quick to let you know some huge news. How to Beat is officially expanding its universe with a brand new channel. Yeah, that's right, even more yapping from your boy Truly. The new channel is called Couch Logic. This latest endeavor from the How to Beat team will dive deeper into everything pop culture. We'll have ranking videos, video essays, and more. We'll be covering all types of movies, TV shows, and video games, and not just stuff in the horror genre. And it won't just be me. Many of the other behind-the-scenes team members at How to Beat, aka my homies, will be stepping into the spotlight to help me take this to the next level. So tell a friend to tell a friend, come check out the new channel, Couch Logic, linked in the description down below. Thinking that choosing one of them to die is the only way out, Ramirez here suggests that they should put it up to a vote. This causes Lozano to start acting pretty strange, pointing to Ramirez and saying that he must be the one behind it all. It turns out that these two already know each other, but before they have a chance to explain, the guards roll a strange metal ball into the room. Inside, they find a cryptic message reading, "A child's blood is on your hands." And that's when the truth about Lozano finally comes out. The man's a car thief whose actions led to the death of an innocent girl. But Ramirez isn't exactly a role model himself, and while he was being questioned in the bunker, they showed footage of him confessing that he was under investigation for murder. As the men start arguing over what to do next, the guards roll another message into the room, this time showing the name Vanessa Torres. Lozano recognizes her as the agent who was working his case, and that's when Ramirez finally admits his side of the story. Realizing that he's caught, he explains that he runs an illegal operation selling stolen cars, and after what happened to Lozano, the agent was trying to take down his entire organization. Well, Ramirez here broke into her home looking for something to use as blackmail, but he didn't realize that the agent was home, and when she confronted him, he ended up killing the woman by accident. Noticing a pattern, Alex points out that the guards are using these messages to turn them against each other, but now they're all too busy fighting to listen, and it seems like they can't get any closer to the truth. After a while, Lozano here thinks that he has it all figured out, admitting that his actions caused the girl's death. and hoping that the guards will let them go now that he's confessed, but they can tell that he's not really sorry, and as punishment, the voice announces that the man's son has just been killed. Refusing to believe it, he shouts at the guards to show him proof that what they're saying is true, but they only stand there watching as the voice announces that they have to go even further to earn their freedom. Furious, Lozano blames Ramirez for getting him into this, but that's when they hear a recording of his mentor, Father Paul, revealing that he's also been captured by the organization, and saying that they've all been chosen for a reason. Now it's Breyer's turn to speak up, and he explains that he was also mistreated as a child, which eventually led him to continuing the cycle as he got older. When he was brought in, he remembers being shown footage of a time when his past victims came back for revenge, saying that the purpose of the test must be to make them answer for their crimes. But even though he knows that it's wrong, he could never find a way to control the urges. Picking up on this, Alec realizes that the man kept repeating the same actions despite knowing that he should stop. So maybe the answer is that they need to break the cycle. The unique words that they were all given seem to relate to a pattern in each of their lives, but they're still too busy arguing among themselves to make any real progress. Okay, the collective is playing these guys like fools, and they don't even know it. They'll never get anywhere as long as they keep fighting with each other, and it seems like that's exactly what the guards want. Now, we know that every single one of these guys is guilty of a serious crime, but what makes this interesting is that their crimes also put them in conflict with someone else in the group. By drip feeding them the information about each other's backstories, the guards are giving them just enough to make them suspicious of each other, but forcing them to fill in the blanks with their own assumptions, creating a sense of paranoia and distrust among the group, when the only way out is for them to work together. It's part of human nature to react more harshly if damaging information is exposed by a third party than when somebody voluntarily confesses themselves, because having to learn what they did from an outside source makes it seem like the person can't be trusted. Knowing this, they all should make a pact to fully come clean about what they've done. That way, they'll be working with all the information, and it takes away the guards' power to use paranoia against them. Now, for somebody like Alec, whose crimes are obviously a lot less bad than somebody like the priest, coming clean before the guards have a chance to expose him will actually help stop the others from turning against him, keeping him safe from being labeled as the parasite. Yeah, they haven't realized it yet, but I think the message about Lozano's family is actually proof that the guards are bluffing, and here's why. If they were planning to use Lozano's family as leverage, then they would have kept them alive, so I think what they're actually doing is trying to get him to rage and crash out. Even if what they're saying is true, there's nothing he can do to stop it besides getting out of the game, so from now on, I'd ignore anything the guards say to trigger them and stay focused on finding the answer for themselves. Speaking up, Cartwright remembers something that the mysterious woman told him during their meeting, saying how she warned him about a battle taking place in their minds. The way that he sees it, there must be another answer besides choosing someone to kill, and the only way to figure it out is if they start working together. That's when the camera starts playing footage from another news report, and now everyone's attention falls on this guy Pierce. He's a police officer who shot a man for no reason during a traffic stop gone wrong, but got away with it when he claimed that it was self-defense. Now that they found out that he's a cop and everyone else is a criminal, Lozano immediately says that he must be the parasite they're supposed to eliminate. They're already down to just 35 minutes left, but as they all continue to turn on each other, the fighting gets so bad that the guards eventually decide to step in. Stepping into the cage, they drag Lozano out and bring him back into the interrogation room, where he's strapped into a strange device that looks like it's scanning his brainwaves. After a moment, the mysterious woman comes out to confront him, but he quickly finds out that she's actually a hologram, and they start grilling him with questions about his crimes. Next, they bring in the police officer Pierce and force him to watch the body cam footage from the shooting, using the machine to make him feel like he's just been shot instead. Terrified, he demands to know who set this up, but the woman turns the questions back around on him, forcing him to think about why he was chosen. They keep going through the prisoners one at a time, bringing up the most traumatizing events of their lives as if they're intentionally trying to make them as angry as possible. Last up for the brainwashing is Mohammed, and they try getting to him by playing back the footage from his shop. Well, this guy must be some kind of sleeper agent or something, because when they first brought him in, he almost escaped after breaking out of his zip ties and opening up an absolute can of whoop ass on all the guards. But this time he refuses to let them bring out that side of him again, and the interrogator says that he's getting closer to the truth. Alright, yeah, it looks like Muhammad here just learned everything they need to know, and when they wake up again, the first thing he should do is share this information with the rest of the group. This experiment wasn't just set up to torture them, because like everything else the collective does, it actually had a very specific purpose. They're using neurological behavioral conditioning to measure how each person has evolved during the game. The helmet that they strapped to their heads looked like some kind of damn EEG device that was used to track their emotional response patterns and test how each prisoner processes their crimes to see if they're willing to change. For Pierce, they literally put him in the shoes of his victim, causing him to feel the same pain and fear that the man felt, forcing his brain to show a mirror response and activating his sense of empathy. For Muhammad, they showed him the people who he wants revenge on the most, and actively encouraged him to react with violence. But because he chose to stay calm, it shows that he's growing as a person. That's why he's getting closer to the truth. Remember, the collective already knows everything these guys have done, so when the woman asked Pierce why he was there, maybe she wasn't asking him what he did to deserve it, but instead she was asking him what he should do about it now. I mean, they've already gotten Lozano to own up to his crimes, but punished him when his apology wasn't genuine. So if confession wasn't the goal, then it must be what Alec tried to tell them earlier. They have to find the pattern that they all keep repeating and learn to break the cycle in each other's lives. And the unique word that they were given at the start already tells them their instructions. Like for example, Alec's word was surrender, but we know that he runs from his fears by drinking, so instead of simply resisting the urge to get revenge, what they actually want him to do is learn to forgive the priest altogether. The same goes for each of the other guys, and now they need to start looking at the word they were given, not just for its literal meaning, but for the deeper context behind how it relates to the flaws in their own coping mechanisms. If they're able to help each other break the cycle, then maybe that means they've defeated the parasite and the collective will let them go. But anyone who doesn't play along might be the parasite that they need to get rid of. When they eventually wake up again, they find themselves back inside the cage, and the guard taps on the side of his helmet, signaling for them to listen. That's when they start playing audio of a man recruiting Muhammad here to join a terrorist organization. But he needs a chance to explain his side of the story. He says that for all his life, he was constantly treated like an outcast because of his ethnicity, but he finally reached the breaking point when his wife was shot and killed by a group of racists in front of their shop. The others don't seem to have much sympathy for him, especially because he was planning to hurt innocent people, but Alec quickly stops them all from fighting, pointing out how every time they argue, the voice on the speaker tells them all to wake up. They still aren't sure what it means, but Ramirez seems convinced that the key has something to do with choice, like how they all made bad decisions despite knowing what they did was wrong. Alec realizes that everything from the guards to the rules of the game was nothing but a distraction, saying that what they really need is to change their entire approach. Cartwright backs him up, pointing out that it's human nature to fight with each other, but the reason why is because they're all afraid. To him, it seems like the organizers want them to turn against each other, tricking them into choosing a parasite when really they're all in this together. Agreeing with him, Alex says that the key must be to change their way of thinking, but the others are still too focused on their own problems, and it doesn't take long before the fighting gets so bad that the guards decide to knock them out again for the third freaking time. Waking up again, the men immediately go straight back to arguing, but Alex shouts that they'll never get anywhere if all they do is keep looking at the bad side here. To him, the fact that they all want to get out so badly just goes to show how much they have to live for. And the game never asked them who deserved to die. It asked them why they each deserved to live. This makes him think that the parasite isn't a person at all. It's actually the fear that makes them turn against each other. And agreeing with him, the men all decide that they've finally made their choice. Instead of choosing someone to die, they're gonna stand together to face whatever comes next, and for a moment, the guards seem impressed with their decision. But just when it looks like they've found the answer, he says that they still haven't earned their freedom until they've shown him what they're willing to give up. Alright, these guys keep getting closer to the truth, but they're still not seeing the big picture. The guards keep using the word parasite, and to me, that's not a coincidence. In biology, we know that a parasite is a type of creature that lives inside of another organism, draining their life force for its own survival without giving the host any benefits in return. They even manipulate the host's behavior to ensure their own survival, draining them until there's nothing left, and the parasite completely takes over. In this case, it seems like the word parasite isn't meant to be taken literally, but instead it represents the negative emotional patterns that have been feeding off of each man's choices. This tells us that defeating the parasite isn't about confessing their sins or even forgiving the sins of the others, it's about confronting something that's been growing inside of themselves. It's the fear, anger, and guilt that prevents them from processing their trauma. For Alec, this doesn't just mean forgiving the priest, but completely letting go of the underlying desire for revenge that he's still holding inside. After putting all of this together, I'd explain this to the rest of the group, because letting go of the negative emotions that they're still holding onto is the only way to truly defeat the parasite and earn their freedom. Losing hope, the others go back to arguing with each other until Alec finally puts it all together, realizing that they have to show they've changed through their actions instead. It turns out that earlier he actually hesitated at the last second and spared his abuser's life. Now it's as if the organizers give him a second chance at revenge by putting him in with Father Breyer here, but instead he's decided to forgive the man and finally let go of the anger that's been holding him back. Speaking up, Muhammad lets out all of the aggression that he's been keeping inside, explaining how he turned against society because he was always treated like an outsider. That's when Cartwright joins in, saying how he can relate to how the man feels, but reminding him that hurting innocent people is never the answer. Now it's Pierce's turn to face the truth, and he says that he became an officer because he remembered feeling powerless as a child. He wanted to help protect the ones who couldn't stand up for themselves, but over the years of working with the other officers, the fear eventually got to him until he stopped seeing other people as humans and started seeing them as threats. This is how he ended up killing an innocent man, and it just goes to show you that even people with good intentions can still turn into monsters when they're blinded by hate. As for Ramirez, his mentor Father Paul was the only person who ever looked out for him, and it breaks his heart knowing that his actions put the man in danger. To him, Father Paul is the type of person who they should all aspire to be like, and he needs to do a better job of following the man's example. Last up is Lozano, but unlike everybody else, he's still acting like he's got nothing to confess. Extremely frustrated now, they all turn on him, saying how he's going to get them all whacked if he doesn't play along, but he insists that he's got nothing yet to apologize for. Pointing to Ramirez, he says that he's been working for the man for almost 15 years, but he still barely has a penny to show for it. He's never been able to move forward in life because he didn't have enough confidence, but now that he's changing the way that he thinks, he's decided to start believing in himself. With only 10 seconds left on the countdown, they all turn to face the guards, deciding that the answer was to let go of the fear that they've been holding in their hearts. Suddenly, the guards take off their masks, revealing that they're the same people who originally lured them into joining the game. But instead of letting them go, the leader announces that it's time for Phase 3, activating their shock collars as they're all knocked unconscious. Entering the cage, the guards drag the men back to the interrogation room and remove their collars. One at a time, they lead them over to another prisoner with a bag placed over their heads. And now it's time for the final part of the test. First to go is Alec, and as they remove the bag, they reveal that the prisoner is none other than the priest who abused him, before handing the man a loaded revolver and leaving the final decision up to him. Alright, everything's been leading up to this moment, and the decision that Alec makes here is going to mean the difference between earning his freedom or remaining trapped as a prisoner forever. Remember, this is still part of the test, and by now, the answer should be obvious. Right now, Alec has two choices that he can make: either kill the man and take his revenge, or let go of his anger and prove that he's ready to move on as a person. It's not going to be easy because everything in his mind is going to be screaming at him to pull the trigger. This guy didn't just abuse him physically, he completely ruined Alec's entire life at a young age, making him lose trust and authority, and become afraid of the world when things could have turned out completely differently. Now the only things that he has in life are the alcohol rage and the underlying desire for revenge to keep him going. Because of what the priest did, Alex felt powerless his entire life, but now it looks like the tables have turned. This time, the priest is the one who's powerless, and there's no one around to stop him from getting his revenge. That's why this moment represents the ultimate test of everything that he's learned so far. Because, in a way, this entire experiment has been about more than just trapping him in a cage. It's been a physical reflection of the battle going on within his own mind. If he chooses to give in to the urges and repeat the cycle, then he's choosing to remain a prisoner, and the collective will never let him go. But if he's able to overcome the urges, even when the chance to get revenge is right in front of him, they'll know that he's ready to appreciate true freedom again. Although it won't be easy, he needs to forgive the priest and prove that he's ready to move on, but he's not the only one who's being tested. In a separate room, Cartwright sits down at a table surrounded by masked guards, checking the other men's names off a list as they complete their challenge. For Muhammad, they have the racist who killed his wife locked inside an explosive vest, handing him the detonator and a pair of wire cutters as he prepares to make his choice. Furious, he falls to his knees, overcome with the urge to take the man's life, but at the last moment, he changes his mind and cuts the wire, deciding to spare his life instead. The priest here is not looking for revenge, so instead they test him with a young boy, waiting to see if he'll resist the urges or give in to his old ways. Which, I mean, ugh, you nasty. He struggles for a while trying to hold himself back, but the moment that he reaches out, he's suddenly hit with a powerful jolt of electricity as a punishment for failing the test. And I mean, thank fucking God. As for Ramirez, they show him that his mentor was one of the guards all along, and he immediately decks the man straight in the face for betraying him. But the mentor orders the other guards to stay back, giving him a chance to let go of the anger that he's holding inside. Pierce, the police officer, has to face the mother of the man that he killed, but as the woman lashes out at him for what he's done, he silently lets her do it, apologizing from the bottom of his heart as they both break down in tears. Finally, Alec lowers his revolver, knowing that taking his revenge on the man wouldn't bring him to any true peace. So instead, he decides that he's going to forgive him and let go of his rage. The guards hand Ramirez a stun baton, but as he holds it up to the man's throat, he ends up making the same decision, choosing to surrender instead of continuing the cycle. Proving that he's ready, he's dragged away by the guards as Cartwright checks his name off the list, but there's one last person who still needs to be tested. Last up is Lozano, and he's given a chance to take revenge against Ramirez for always holding him back. But unlike everyone else, it seems like he still hasn't learned his lesson. Instead of forgiving him, he holds the revolver up to the man's head and pulls the trigger, only to realize that it was all a trick. Just then, the device sends a jolt of electricity through his knee, causing him to fall over in pain as the guards drag him away for failing his test. Okay, well, it looks like Lozano here is finally about to get what's coming to him. Failing the death game equivalent of an open book test is just straight up embarrassing. And knowing what he did to deserve being here, I don't feel bad for this guy at all. So guess what, Lozano? You just f***ed up. I think the most important thing to remember here is that nobody ended up in this situation by accident. They went out and hunted down 7 of the worst people that they could possibly find. So it's bad when you manage to stand out as an asshole even amongst a group of literal monsters. Anytime the others got anywhere near cooperating, you'd just chime in with some more rage bait bullshit until they all started fistfighting again. When without you even being there, they'd probably have figured it out and passed the test in the first 20 minutes. I mean, everyone else had to literally face the most traumatizing thing in their lives, but your test was to forgive Ramirez for what exactly? Keeping you employed? Now, I'm not here to argue this guy wasn't greedy, but as a literal murderer, maybe you should lower your expectations for how people treat you just a little bit. So everyone say bye-bye, Lozano, because you just f***ed up. Setting his weapon on the ground, Alec turns his back on the priest and begins to walk away, but the next thing that he knows, he's waking up back in the outside world. As he picks himself up off the ground, he's surprised to find Cartwright standing there next to a blacked out car, and the man reveals that he's been working for the organization the entire time. Saying there's someone that he should meet, he brings Alec to a fancy house somewhere in the heart of the city, where he's reintroduced to the man who he met at the bar. Turns out that the guy was just another player in the game, and now it's time for him to meet the collective's true leader, the mysterious woman who they call the Architect. Asking him to take a seat, she begins telling him the old Cherokee legend, the Tale of the Two Wolves, explaining that everyone has a good and evil side to their nature, but the side that wins is always the one that you feed. Confused, he points out that their methods seem a little extreme, but the woman explains that it's the most effective way to bring their trauma to the surface and force them to defeat the evilness within themselves. Although he didn't realize it at the time, they'd been telling him the answer since the very beginning. At first, he thought becoming free meant taking his revenge on the priest, when what they really wanted was for him to finally let go of his hatred. To the architect here, it feels like society has gotten to a point where we no longer see the goodness in other people. So as important as it is to face the anger within yourself, we can never fully heal until we learn to forgive the evilness in others. Basically, she jigsawed him into learning a new appreciation for life, and now that he's finally ready, he can help them spread their new philosophy all over the world. But Alec isn't the only one who passed the test. Muhammad goes home to meet with the man who recruited him, learning that he was part of the organization as well, and realizing that the best way to honor his wife's memory is to help others, not take his rage out on the innocent. The police officer Pierce decides to plead guilty, taking a small step towards restoring the public's trust in law enforcement by holding himself accountable for what he's done. Ramirez also decides to turn himself in, confessing to killing the agent instead of continuing to run from the truth. The only one who never learned his lesson was Lozano here, and back at the organization's headquarters, Alex sees that they have him trapped in a padded cell, forcing him to relive the memories of his crimes until he finally changes his ways. Even though he isn't willing to change, they send someone to visit the mother of the girl that he killed, handing her a box full of cash and promising that they'll be safe from now on. As for Father Breyer, he realizes that he's never going to be able to control the urges, so he chooses to be killed by the organization instead. Fucking weirdo. There's still one last challenge from Alec that he has to face, and returning to the church, he confronts the priest who abused him, saying how the best revenge will be keeping the world safe from predators like him. The old man won't be getting away so easily though, because as Alec goes to leave the church, a group of masked guards storm in to drag the priest into the next game. In the end, Alec ultimately joins the team himself, becoming one of the masked guards so that he can help make the world a better place. He may not have gotten his revenge, but he learned something much more important. Sometimes the only way to truly move forward is to let go of the past. Catalyst. Now that was some wholesome death game therapy vibes right there, all condensed into a movie with a crazy, the masks from Heat. I don't know, man. It was crazy. But you gotta let me know down in the comments if you would have done anything differently. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. We got more banger videos coming your way all summer long. How to Beat, baby. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.